The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. Friedrich Nietzsche. It starts with a whisper. That nagging voice in the back of your head. The one that says, "You're weak. You're failing. You don't matter." Every man who's ever felt powerless knows that voice. It doesn't shout. It doesn't scream. It slowly drains you, until one day you wake up and realize you've become a ghost in your own life. But Nietzsche, the German philosopher who stared into the abyss and refused to look away, had something to say to that man. Not comfort, not sympathy, but ruthless advice, sharpened like a blade. Because Nietzsche knew something most men don't want to hear. Weakness isn't cured by pity. It's burned away by fire. Nietzsche lived in the 19th century, but his words hit harder today than ever. He looked around and saw a society drowning in conformity, mediocrity, and herd mentality. Most people, he said, live as slaves. Not slaves in chains, but slaves to public opinion, to comfort, to fear of standing alone. And his most ruthless warning was this: the surest way to corrupt a man is to teach him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. In other words, the more you follow the crowd, the more you lose yourself, and the more powerless you become. Nietzsche believed that most men willingly surrender their power because it's easier than carrying the weight of freedom. They prefer to obey rather than to create, to consume rather than to conquer, to kneel rather than to climb. At the core of Nietzsche's philosophy is one idea: the will to power. Forget happiness. Forget comfort. For Nietzsche, the driving force of life isn't pleasure or peace. It's the will to grow, to dominate, to expand, to assert yourself against resistance. Life itself is will to power, he wrote. This means that when you feel powerless, it's not because life has been unfair to you. It's because you've stopped fighting. You've stopped willing. You've surrendered your power instead of exercising it. To Nietzsche, the tragedy of modern men isn't that they suffer. It's that they suffer without meaning. They are beaten by life, but they never learn to use that pain as fuel. Nietzsche made a brutal distinction between two kinds of morality: master morality and slave morality. Master morality is born from strength. It values courage, independence, risk, creation. The strong man does not ask if something is permitted. He asks if it is possible. Slave morality is born from weakness. It values obedience, humility, safety, pity. It glorifies being a victim because victims can demand protection. And here's Nietzsche's ruthless advice: if you feel powerless, it's because you've been poisoned by slave morality. You've been trained to see weakness as virtue and strength as vice. That's why you feel guilty for wanting more. That's why you apologize for your ambition. That's why you silence yourself when you should be speaking. Nietzsche would tell you, stop worshiping weakness. Stop calling your chains morality. The herd praises obedience only because it fears men who can stand alone. Nietzsche didn't offer men easy comfort. In fact, he said the path to power demands that you walk straight into the abyss. One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. Chaos, pain, struggle. These aren't obstacles. They're the raw material of greatness. But here's the terrifying part. Most men avoid that confrontation. They numb themselves with distractions, endless scrolling, cheap pleasures, borrowed opinions. They never dare to sit alone in silence and face their own chaos. And so they stay powerless, because the man who fears his own darkness can never command his light. Nietzsche's advice? Don't run from the abyss. Stare into it until you stop trembling. Walk through the fire until weakness burns away. Nietzsche's most famous idea is the Übermensch, often translated as the Overman or Superman. But don't mistake this for a comic book fantasy. Nietzsche wasn't talking about flying or shooting lasers from your eyes. He was describing a man who rises above herd morality, a man who creates his own values, a man who does not beg for permission to exist, but writes his existence into reality with every step. Man is something to be surpassed, he wrote. In other words, the man you are today must die so that the man you could become can live. This isn't self-improvement. It's self-overcoming. It's a refusal to stay small, to stay ordinary, to stay powerless. Nietzsche's ruthless advice? Kill the version of yourself that kneels. Give birth to the version of yourself that commands. But here's where Nietzsche becomes even more ruthless. He doesn't just tell men to endure suffering, he tells them to love it. My formula for greatness in a human being, Nietzsche said, is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Amor fati, the love of fate. This means you don't just accept your pain. You embrace it. You look at every wound, every humiliation, every failure, and you say, yes, this too. I needed this. Because Nietzsche believed that greatness comes not from escaping suffering, but from transforming it into power. If you can say yes to everything, the failures, the betrayals, the loneliness, you become untouchable. Nothing can break a man who has learned to love his fate. Imagine this. What if you had to live your life exactly as it is, every pain, every mistake, every regret, over and over, for eternity? That was Nietzsche's thought experiment, called the eternal return. Most men would collapse at the idea. But Nietzsche's ruthless challenge was this: live in such a way that you would choose it. Live so fully, so powerfully, so authentically, that even if you had to repeat it forever, you would not curse your existence. That is the standard, not comfort, not safety, but a life so real that you could bear it again and again without despair. Nietzsche described 3 stages of becoming: the camel, the lion, and the child. The camel carries the weight of other people's expectations. It obeys, it kneels, it endures. The lion rebels. It says no. It fights the dragon of "thou shalt." It tears down the false idols of society. And the child, the final stage, creates. It says yes. It invents new values, new meaning, new life. Most men never get past the camel stage. They carry the weight until they collapse. Some awaken as lions. They roar, they rebel, they fight. But the rarest are those who become the child. Creators, builders, authors of their own destiny. Nietzsche's ruthless advice? If you feel powerless, it's because you're still a camel. You're still carrying burdens that aren't yours. Become the lion. And then, dare to become the child. So what would Nietzsche say to the powerless man today? He would not say, wait for someone to save you. He would not say, blame society, blame women, blame the world. He would not say, be patient, things will change. No, he would look you in the eye and say, no one can build the bridge on which you must cross the river of life, but you yourself. If you want power, you must take it. If you want freedom, you must fight for it. If you want meaning, you must create it. No one is coming. No one owes you. No one will save you. That's the ruthless truth. And the liberating one. Picture a man standing on a cliff. The wind is howling. The void stretches out before him. Most men step back. They run, they hide. But Nietzsche's advice, step forward. Leap, not because you know where you'll land, but because only by leaping will you learn to fly. The powerless man waits for permission. The powerful man writes his own law. The Übermensch is born in that leap, the moment you stop waiting and start becoming. If these words hit you like a strike to the chest, don't ignore it. That feeling inside you right now, that fire, that's your will to power waking up. Don't smother it. Don't excuse it. Don't kneel on it. Feed it, act on it, live it. Because as Nietzsche said, the secret of reaping the greatest fruitfulness and the greatest enjoyment from life is to live dangerously. So live dangerously. Live ruthlessly. Live as if your power was waiting for you just on the other side of fear. And if you're ready to hear more truths the world doesn't want you to hear, like this video, share it with a man who needs to wake up. Subscribe, because this is only the beginning. The work of becoming powerful isn't theirs to do. It was always yours.